All right. The infamous red light is on, and I think it's flashing at me that says, start making sense. How are you, Bruce?
Too late. I'm good, thanks.
I know. Well, I think we're the only two people that think we make sense, and that's fine by me because knowing you and I knowing that you think the same way that way, then it's not so lonely.
Right.
So anyway, I even forget what episode this is, but we were both struck by this Peggy Noonan article that ran in the Wall Street Journal last week, which is real interesting, and she's always a very, very insightful opinion writer, I guess. But the whole notion was, now she's a classic New Yorker from way back. Clearly
Yep.
loves the city, thinks, lives, and breathes it, every aspect of it, whether it's politically, religiously, spiritually, artistically, all those things. But her piece was, the old New York won't come back post-COVID, which kind of strikes you like, oh, I think the natural inclination is we all want the good old days to come back, even when those good old days were 1 year ago. That's number one. And then secondly, and she goes through a whole lot of things that, may not come back the way we know it, like the working in certain buildings and so forth. But then she had this incredible phrase about halfway through it that said, to lead in times like this will require the eyes of an artist who sees the broad shape of things, not an analyst who sees data points. An artist that sees the eyes of an artist who sees the broad shape of things, not an analyst who sees data points. And you think about, wow, especially today's technological world, there's so much on data. So I'm going to throw it to you on two levels. Number one, as a classic New Yorker yourself, how do you react to that notion of the old New York won't come back, number one? And number two, your reaction to her phrase related to, in times like this, you need the eyes of an artist.
Well, I'm going to do the second one first, if you will. I think that she's right in terms of the eyes of an artist. I mean, we're at a point now where there is an opportunity, whether we like it or not, transformational change is coming to cities and counties across America. Do I think, as she stated in that article, that the collapse of the commuter culture is real? I don't know, but let's face it, a lot of people have learned that they can work remotely effectively, at least for short periods. So even if they come back, they're not coming back 5 days a week and sitting on a train for 2 hours each day. So in that respect, yes, New York is going to change, but the reasons to live here, the energy, the arts, the culture, the food, before these were commuter places, they were draws because great people interacted with each other. I don't think great people are excited to interact over Zoom as we do this on Zoom. I think personal interaction and the idea of, you talked about arts. What's the thing, the salon culture? Yeah. So maybe we'll actually rebuild the salon culture where you'll have great minds sitting down over drinks and a meal and thinking about the future and what can be and helping make it happen. And that's a draw, because you're not going to do that over Zoom.
No, you're not. And you're not going to be able to generate great ideas necessarily over Zoom. Zoom is a transaction.
Yes.
You're going to be there for a certain point of time, and most people, in fact, there's articles out now and some research saying people are going through Zoom fatigue and are trying to avoid it.
Yeah. I think we're all social animals too. I know I am.
Well, it's funny.
And the idea that people aren't going to get together is crazy. Now you got to be able to make it safe and fun and affordable. I mean, to me, the biggest transformational change in New York is, I think it's going to get a lot younger quick.
Really?
Yeah, I think all those 50 pluses, me included, or a lot of them, are going to look at the city and say, you know what? The reasons I moved here and stayed here and love the city are coming back, but I don't take advantage of them every week anymore. I take advantage of them once a month. I can live somewhere else and go and get a hotel room once a month and spend 2 or 3 days in the city and actually maybe save myself some money in the process. I think tourism will come back. Certainly media and the arts are going to come back. You know, when you think of the culture like Greenwich Village in the 60s, you know, the city has to reinvent itself anyway, or to stay vital. Commuter culture, I don't know if that's the key. It certainly has been the key to the office building boom.
Well,
and what happens with all those, I don't know.
Well, what you're getting at is the need to get at the core of what really is New York City. And when I say New York City, if anyone's listening to this outside of New York, this you can apply this to almost any location, any city or whatever, you know. But New York is such an urban center, such a composite of so much about this country, especially in its early beginnings. I made a note to myself as you were speaking about, you know, the social interaction of what's key to that place was when I was reading the biography of one of the classic and iconic New Yorkers, Alexander Hamilton. He wrote about when he was 17 years old, working the wharfs and the piers in New York. Now, first of all, think about how stinky that was then. But anyway, all that aside, he was astounded because in his journal, which they all did in those days, they wrote down things a lot. He said, I counted 17 different languages. And he wrote it as, wow, there's no other place like this. This is a Mecca. You know, there was no internet. There was no theater. You know, there was no this. Then they made a little bit of things here and there. As a matter of fact, I think Harlem was still farmlands at those days, you know?
For sure.
You know, but at its core, at its DNA was something that was giving birth then that built a belief system. And, you know, I think about so many of the different politicians that get up and they talk about, well, we must do this, we must do that. It's almost like you got to extract yourself out and say, okay, when it comes to a place like New York or any place, it's in terms of true leadership and going back to that artist statement, that's why it is vital at this point in time, because you need a sense of what's the belief system? What do we believe this place to be? What do you capture in terms of the essence of what made it great and those things that will continue to make it great, recognizing that some of these things are going to still have to change. It may not be that you need people coming in and out every day to kind of walk up into an office building, but it'll be replaced by something else. And I think your comment about it will inevitably get younger is a fascinating insight. I haven't thought of that, which could be the key to continuing to make it vital. But when you think about some of the great leaders in the world that are out there, it hasn't even been about the specifics of their plans, even if they had one. It was more or less about their sense of vision of what that world could be like. And then you get those followers. So let's just hope as time is going by here, we get some folks that are getting a little out of their own clothes a little bit, you know, and their own dogma and start really thinking, you know, almost like we've done in the past for brand development. What's the essence here? What's the core fundamentals that from its very beginning made it great and continue to make it great? And the rest of the stuff just becomes sort of window dressing around it, you know, details.
Well, you know, New York grew up with the idea that it was going to be a truly modern, global city. And I don't see any reason for that to change. Now, it has to certainly react to the realities and be nimble moving forward. But the idea that urban centers are going to die, I certainly think the economics are going to change,
Right.
at least for a while.
Right.
But, you know, I don't know. Do you want to live, you know, 4 hours from the nearest urban center, you personally?
No.
I know that's not my cup of tea. You know, God bless, but that's not my cup of tea.
No,
So,
well, I think what we nailed down is a lot of hope, a lot of insight. It is a time for people with vision, and it's sort of like that artist view. It's a little, and it's funny because when you think about just data points, that's about looking backwards. And you
right,
can even look backwards now really well because no one in this time, well, this time last year we were in the middle of it, but if you go back a little bit over a year, there was little blurbs about possibly something happening here, but no one was able to actually really project it in terms of what we've gone through, what we still haven't completed. So it's now the time in terms of saying those data points, okay, fine, they have a certain place, but is where can you take this place? And
right.
beyond data, go back to those fundamentals that made the place great. Use it as the core foundation, the key pillars, but build upon it. Make sense?
It makes sense. And we just don't want New York to become Philly.
Oh God, good. I'll tag our some of our Philly friends on this. All right,
You got
bye bye.
Bye.